Hi, friends. So let's see what we talk about today. So I'm also channeling the nine, transmitting information from white light entities. And Magenta Pixie recently posted a transmission or a translation of her dream and the interpretation of it, and it was about the dark plan, the dark forces, the dark plan, and their elemental usage in their plan. And so how they're going to be using the four elements, which is earth, water, fire, and air, and then the fifth element of ether. And so what came to me, the insight that I was given was that we're already in the middle of this. And so corona was air, coronavirus is air, it's transmitted through the air, it affects your respiratory, it is air based. So that is the air element of the dark plan. The second element that we are seeing right now is fire, especially with the racial protesting, with this righteous anger that is coming forth that is in response to injustice. And so fire is associated with anger, or anger is associated with fire. It's probably more appropriate. And so righteous anger, as Rosalind Breyer in the Wheels of Light, like she says, so the root chakra is represented by fire. And I know if you look online, the Ayurvedic tradition will say that it's earth, and I don't disagree with that. But for my work in terms of processing and transmuting emotions and guiding people through ascension, the elemental associations that are given in the Wheels of Light are my preference, and they feel more aligned for my work. So the root chakra is represented by fire, which is also anger and security and our base needs, and like primal instinct. And so the fire of anger is not always bad if it's righteous anger. Righteous anger is anger that is in response to something that is unjust. And so this is what we're seeing now. And so this fire, this anger, this righteous anger is appropriate and it's necessary. The difference is the way we heal this, the way we heal righteous anger is, as she talks about in Wheels of Light, anger is an appropriate emotion response to injustice. Anger becomes an energy drain when we let it lead to depression. Anger becomes an energy gain when we let it lead to compassion. And so this anger, the trauma that is coming forth needs to be heard. It needs to have space to be expressed. It needs to be acknowledged. It needs to come to the surface. This is all 100% appropriate. The problem becomes if we allow this to turn into a depression, or if we allow this to turn into an anxiety or a guilt or a shame, if we allow it to turn back in on itself, so to speak, and go into that negative spectrum of emotions, it will turn into an energy drain. It will drain us of our vital energy, versus if we can see that the only way forward is compassion, is forgiveness on all sides, forgiveness to ourselves, forgiveness to our ancestors, forgiveness to the past, forgiveness to the people that didn't understand because they didn't have the awareness, forgiveness of all things. And so that doesn't mean that the trauma that is being expressed now needs to be ignored or silenced. By no means. It needs to be expressed to the point where forgiveness can occur. It's almost like opening up a wound that is festering. If we don't open that wound and clean it out and like let it heal, if we don't give that wound the air it needs to breathe, it won't be able to heal. It will just go back to like rotting, basically. So that's what's happening now. So right now we're in the fire element of the dark plan, so to speak, of the dark forces. What I feel, and what I want to say is you can take this to the bank. What I feel is the next one that's coming is Earth. And so I don't have, they show me bits and pieces. I don't have like a complete picture. But what I mean by Earth is like I've been having me personally, this might just be my personal concerns because I'm a California native, because I've grown up in earthquakes, but I have a sense that there's earthquakes coming. And this is globally, not just the West Coast where I live in the United States, but Earth in terms of earthquakes, in terms of the actual earth in terms of soil and food production. We will very soon be confronted with the commercial food industry has a much lower nutrient content than like organic farming or your own farming or like local agriculture, or if you're farmers market. So this will become very apparent, and also the soil nutrient content that will also come to light very soon too. So things about food production and earthquakes and anything earth element. And so this will be the next wave of this dark plan, so to speak. And so what I want to explain about this, the dark plan, is I had a friend ask me, do you think all of this is implanted? Like, do you think this is all by design? Like, do you think the dark forces or the deep state or whatever you want to call it, do you think these dark forces are implanting all of these things, like as if Corona was implanted, or the riots are being manipulated? And what I feel is there's a mixture of both. And whether or not the implanted or the designed aspect from the dark is just the media manipulation to string you along, that may be very possible. I don't have all of the answers. What I feel is hindsight is 2020. At some point in time, we will be able to look back. Right now, it's like as if we're in a mosaic, and we're in one piece of the mosaic, and while we're in that piece, everything seems disjointed and it doesn't make sense. It's not until we can move past this piece and zoom out and see all the pieces connected that we see a picture. And so that's what life is like. But that's what this moment that we're in is like. And so whether or not this is by design, by the dark, or the natural evolution of things, which to me feels, well, it's natural evolution either way, because we're constantly in a swing of balance between the dark and the light. This is the nature. It's within each of us, on the micro aspect. It's in society on the macro aspect. It's in the universe. It's in nature, moving from spring to winter, moving from the long days of summer to the long nights of winter. This is the natural balance of the universe. This is one of the universal laws. And so whether or not it's by design, what needs to be remembered is the dark gives birth to the light. So I feel a sense of compassion for the dark forces, because whether or not they're doing this for our benefit, for our evolution, that's what's happening. The more darkness we are confronted with, we will reach in deeper within ourselves and pull out light. And so you will find evidence of whatever you look for. And so for me, I just see people really waking up and unifying. And like, as we are being confronted with these shadows that have been insidious within our culture, that we've been taught to just ignore or turn a blind eye, or just to accept it as that's the way it is and things will never get better. As these shadows come to the surface, we're also being given the opportunity and the ability to act in our own light and to heal them. And so whether or not this is by design, I feel this is all for the better. Like we are waking up as a species. People are becoming more aware of their health, of their needs, of their priorities, of what's important with their families, of connections. The idea of separation through the quarantine of the coronavirus has really highlighted what's important to us. We've had to reevaluate our values. And so whether or not this is by design, whether or not this is all manufactured or real, as we are going through these dark pulses, so to speak, we are also having a greater awareness and a greater awakening. And so we are in the Great Awakening, we are in the Great Purge also, but what we are purging is the shadows. We're purging what has made us sick up until this point. And so it's going to be a bumpy ride. I'm not going to lie to you. We're coming to the end of the first trimester. So what they've shown me is that there's three waves, three pulses. I don't know how else to put it. I don't have a good wording for it, because the way they show it to me is we're coming towards the end of the first third, and then it's as if we'll have a little bit of a lull, like a breather, and then we'll move on to the second third, and then the third. And so almost like the birth canal, as if like, it's interesting, as if it's the 9 months of the human birthing. We're also being birthed into a new awakening. And so not everybody's going to come in the first wave. Not everybody's going to take the gentle route and listen to the signs of life as they are speaking to us. Life is always speaking to you. And if you're willing to listen and take the gentle lessons when they're gentle, if you're willing to listen to the whispers of life, you can avoid a lot of more difficult lessons by continuing to dig your feet into the ground. So what I mean by that, for example, let's talk about like health or at a relationship. And so for your health, you usually have whispers that there's something off before it becomes a scream from your body. So your body usually whispers to you, but they tend to be subtle, and we tend to kind of ignore them. So you have these small whispers of like, something's not right. This needs to be looked at. Like, this isn't quite right. And we ignore them. We put them off. We don't listen to life or to our body talking to us. And so these things grow into much bigger problems. And then it becomes a much more difficult lesson for us than if we had listened when the whispers were small. And it's the same thing with a relationship. Like, if a relationship is unraveling, you usually have signs early on. There's usually red flags early on of like, oh, this isn't quite right, or like this isn't what I want, or this isn't a good quality, or there's something wrong here. And you get these whispers, but we ignore them, and then they evolve into a much more difficult lesson if we choose not to take it when it's gentle and easy. And so if you are willing to ride this wave, so to speak, if you're willing to evolve as we're going through these transitions, if you're willing to operate in this open-hearted space through this and really take the messaging that life is giving to you, and being willing to learn those lessons, take responsibility for your life, and evolve as we take these steps as a humanity, this will be a far more gentle process for you. And so absolutely, there's going to be people that suffer through this. That's unavoidable. We all come into our lives with certain lessons, or a spectrum of lessons that we're here to learn. And there's certain unavoidable things that no matter what path we take, like, we're always going to end up in that lesson in this life. There's certain soul contracts that we have. Like, that's just the nature of the things. And so, yes, there's going to be people that suffer through this, but you kind of have the choice of your spectrum of suffering to a point. And that doesn't, I'm not being callous about those people suffering. We all have been there. That all easily can be us. But there's also people that will thrive through this, and there's no reason that it can't be you. It's what you choose to do in this time. We are moving into a new earth. But as I said, we're kind of going through the birth canal of that, and Mother Earth is going, whether or not humanity goes with her. I mean, she's on the fast track to evolution, to saving herself, to evolving her nature or her essence, and anything that is not aligned with that abundance and unconditional love and unity mindset, that understanding that we are one. If you're not aligned with that, like, Mother Earth is going to drop you on the way. Like, that's just what it is. And so the sooner you can come into that self-awareness, that understanding, the sooner you can purge the shadows within yourself, this is going to be a much easier ride. And so there's going to be a lot to this. We're on ascension as a humanity, which is kind of wild. People are going to wake up to the fact that they've been very heavily domesticated for hundreds of years at this point. And what I mean by domesticated is your understanding of reality has been limited to benefit the system or certain systems or that have been put in it doesn't benefit us as individuals to have this high level of separation. We're social creatures, like everything about it, like from immunology to our mental health, we are social creatures. We need to be with other human beings. We need to be with other creatures. We need to be with nature. Like there is an overwhelming amount of scientific evidence that supports these things. Your immune system goes up when you have collective immunity. Your immune system goes up when you're being when you're with like germs and other people, and when your immune system has these small stressors, so to speak. It's the same thing when you're building muscle. A small stress will lead to improved health. Large stresses are a different thing, but small stresses are good for you. There's all this evidence that being with nature actually supports your psychology and your mental health. And so science and spirituality are not separate. And I would like to remind you of that, is that they're so complementary. It's just that science, a long time ago, was forced to divert itself from spirituality and religion, mainly when religion came into the fold. But they're not separate. If anything, scientists, as the enlightened, do understand the wonder of the world and the magic that is life. Like, I 100% believe that science supports the idea that there is magic in life and there is magic in the world. So that's that. And then, like I said, we're going through the elements of this dark plan. Oh, that's what I want to say. So whether or not it's by design or not, this dark plan, or whether it's the plan of the light, and it's just it appears as dark because as humans we don't like discomfort, and yet discomfort is really where we see our strength. Like I said, small stressors create growth, and discomfort is the environment as growth, as I've said over and over and over again. So regardless of whether it's by design, it's happening for the light. Just as within ourselves, to awaken, we have to confront our inner shadows and really integrate those into ourselves. By pushing away or denying or not acknowledging the shadows that exist in this, like on all levels, from the micro to the macro, we cannot integrate them to heal them. Like, we are all mixes of light and dark, and that needs to be understood. You're a human being. You're not perfect. Like, we're here to learn lessons, and it's very normal to still have shadows or things that are unhealed, and the average person does. It doesn't mean that's going to be normal forever. We're moving into a point where ideally people won't be carrying these heavy traumas that will manifest in like severe physical ailments or severe inability to connect or have intimacy, or these things that are just natural human instincts that have been contorted and lost to us due to so much unhealed trauma and heavy domestication to separate us from ourselves. And from our human nature, which are these things like connection, unity, love, generosity, abundance, health, food, nature, all of these things. So regardless of whether it's by design, it's all leading to the awakening. It's Magenta Pixie, her transmission said like all roads lead to Rome at this point. And I don't have any doubts about that. So perhaps that's why, as a human, as me, as Caroline, I'm having an easier time with this, because in the back, I understand what's happening. I've been through my own waves of awakening personally before getting to here, like years before this. So I know that when we are going through a shadow period, it is giving birth to the light. So that's that. And then what was the other thing? Oh, so we're going through the elements. These are open to interpretation, but this was my interpretation of the messaging. This was my insight that was given to me. Corona was air. We're going through fire right now with the anger and the riots, which may or may not be. The peaceful protests are real. The vandalism is manufactured. And then the next one I feel will be earth. And so, like I said, whether that's earthquakes or it has something to do with food production. Like I said, I don't have all the details, but it's not just the meat industry. I called that also like months before that happened. I told my friends, I said, hey, make sure you buy meat because I feel like there's going to be a meat shortage. Anyways, but there's something with food, and I don't mean meat. I mean, like produce and soil. And so earth will be the next that will be confronted with. I feel like that will be after this lull. I don't feel like it'll be immediate. We'll kind of finish this first trimester, so to speak, have a little bit of a lull through summer almost, and then we'll pick back up in fall. So summer is going to be, I mean, it's going to be tumultuous. The astrology is literally designed for this. You can think of astrology as if we're in a game, as if we're in a video game, and astrology is the code. And so I saw a post that said astrology is a language, like Japanese. Like, I don't ask you to believe in Japanese, but I ask you if you speak it. And that's how I feel about astrology, is that it's a language. It's the code. You can think of it as the code of the game, the reality that we're in. And then what else? I don't know. After that, it gets kind of blurry. I just know that there's more, and it's difficult also to explain the elements in like a linear way, because while I'm separating them out by time, by chronological time, they're also interwoven and happening at the same time. This is why it gets hard to explain these things in a linear way, because even though corona is air, and what we're seeing now is fire, there are food things going on. There are water things that are going on. And there is ether happening this whole time. So ether is the fifth element. And what I feel with ether is, I feel this will be the last of the elements that we are basically transmuting. And maybe that's why the shadows of each of the elements has to come to light so they can be transmuted and healed. Just as if when we are transmuting through the chakras, which is something I'm working on to offer as a course and as an education, but you transmute each of the individual chakras as you go through them, and each chakra has an associated element, as I mentioned, and the shadow aspect of each of these elements is coming forward to be healed. So New Earth, Gaia, can move into her highest essence. Like I said, if you're not on board, if you're not ready to evolve, like, Mother Earth is still going. So whether or not you come, she doesn't care. She has to go, Mother Earth has to evolve, whether or not us as humans want to join the ride. So ether, what I feel is, and this is what needs to be hammered home, is that ether has to do with, so the throat chakra is associated with ether. And what that means to me is, the reason it's associated with ether is as you transmute a concept through the different chakras, as you transmute an emotion or an experience or a belief or an idea or whatever, as it goes through the chakra system, it gets transmuted. So it evolves as it moves through the chakras. Once you get to the throat, which is ether, it can be released out of the body and spoken into existence as a response. And it can be put back out into the ether. It's no longer a concept within the body, but you can release it. And so the ether also has to do with the fact that we will at some point have to declare that we don't consent, that we don't consent to the domestication and the manipulation through the media. And so especially social media now, as a crystalline, I don't really like the labels, but it's true. As a crystalline, I have a very strong awareness of when someone is attempting to manipulate me, which is funny because people don't realize that I realize, and it's always funny. I'm like, do you know who I am? But so social media is entirely based upon exploiting your psychology. It literally is designed to do that. That's why it's addictive. It's the same way a smoker will reach for a cigarette when they're having that anxiety, even though once they begin smoking, your central nervous system and what your body actually does is it creates a heightened, almost like an anxious state. It replicates that anxious state. You're not actually calming down, but the act of doing it, the act of grabbing it, that addictive habit feels like it's calming it down. It's like, or that's just what it is. It's an addictive habit. And so to calm your anxiety, you reach for a cigarette, even though it doesn't actually calm your body. And so it's the same thing with social media is, I've noticed that even though I don't use social media much, and I truly don't enjoy it, I've found myself being pulled to want to be on there more lately because of the anxiety of what's happening. And I feel like I need answers, but being on social media makes me more anxious because of everything that's posted there and the feelings of pressure. So what I mean by social media is domesticating you and contorting your view of reality. Is the more you see something, the more it becomes normal. This is why in school they teach the same subjects. Like what you learn in history is basically the same thing, just like different variables or different depths within that subject. But you learn pretty much the same thing year after year. And the reason for that replication or that repetition is to internalize it, to make you internalize it. There's a reason to become an expert athlete, you have repetition of the same movement over and over and over again until it becomes automatic. And so the entertainment industry and the news media and now social media are using the same principle in when you see certain things, especially certain subtleties, you don't realize you're seeing them because they're quiet. But when you see certain things over and over and over again, it becomes normal for you. It becomes part of your filter or your view of reality. And so, for example, people on Instagram who are manipulating their life or the pictures of their life, the online persona of their reality for Instagram, it makes you think that that's normal and that you should be doing that, when in actuality it's not normal. There's nothing normal about it. It's completely manufactured. It's a manufactured thing. We are so trained by our phones, we are so trained by technology that it's like Pavlov's dog. You run to your phone, you have a physical reaction when you hear your phone beep. Does that not bother anybody? Like, you are so trained by technology and apps. Like, this thing has you fucking controlled. Like, that should bother you. It's like Pavlov's dog, that experiment where he would ring a bell and then feed the dogs. And so what happened is he would do this over and over and over again. And then eventually he would ring the bell without giving them food, and they would salivate as if they were eating. And so they were so trained by the sound that they had the same response. And this is what's happening too with social media. And so what's happening is they can put anything, the dark forces, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, or even the people just running social media apps, social media platforms, they can put whatever they want on there and manipulate the algorithm. So it's what you see over and over and over again, or versions of that, of what you see over and over and over again. And because you continue to see it, whether or not it's what you believe or what you like, but the repetition of seeing it over and over again creates your filter of reality. It creates your perception of reality. It's like your parents telling you over and over again that people with money are bad, or money is dirty. And so it's not that money is actually these things, but because these ideas have been repeated to you over and over again, especially from a young age, they get internalized as part of your perception of reality. And so what I feel with ether, once we get to the ether element, but it's also happening in the background at the same time, but the final showdown, so to speak, with ether as the element in the dark plan, is that we will come to understand that the social media and the entertainment industry has been pumping subtle indoctrinations into us for years, but more so of late, more so in the last, like, since the expansion of the internet and all of that, but that they've been pumping these indoctrinations into us. And so social media has become so heavily manipulated, and also manipulating you. And so what I feel with the ether one, when that comes up, is that people will be claiming their sovereignty, their independence, their lack of agreement, their non-consent to having their vision of reality and their perception of reality, and not just that, but their psychology manipulated. If you haven't seen that, Facebook has done a study. They did an experiment on users, not like randomly selected users where they pumped negative images into their feeds. This was intentional. This happened. And that those people reported higher instances of depression and anxiety after that. And so if you don't think that your heavy usage of social media is affecting your psychology, you don't understand. And so if you're having a hard time managing your emotions, managing your porous boundaries, managing your energy, or managing your mental state as you're moving through this, get off of social media, because you are absorbing what is being put there. You're not choosing your perception. You're not choosing your mental state at that point, especially when the average user is using social media. And this is I think well underdocumented, but what I've seen is the studies say the average user is using social media 2 hours a day minimum. I know people that are on there for anywhere from 5 to 6. So I think that is highly underreported. But I mean, if you're awake for 16 hours of the day and then you're on social media for 6, I mean, or even more, I think it's more, that's severely impacting your view of reality and your vision. So that's the transmission, that's the channeling, that's the insights that I'm getting, is the dark plan with the elements, and also that this isn't something to be feared. It's going to be a bumpy ride. It's going to be uncomfortable, but this discomfort is the breeding. It's the environment for growth. This discomfort is the soil in which growth is born and sprouted and grown. And so it's going to be a bumpy ride. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you guys, but we didn't pick this isn't the easiest timeline, and it's not the hardest timeline for this to happen. The Great Awakening is what we're in. To awaken, you kind of have to let go of the shit that doesn't work. You have to let go of the things that don't work. It's like on a plant, you remove the yellow and the crispy leaves so it can devote that energy to the healthy leaves and create better growth and fruit. And that's kind of what we're doing now. We're seeing what leaves need to be dropped so we can channel that energy into the growing aspect. And I wish you well. If you have questions, please let me know. I will do my best to post more channelings and transmissions, because that's what I'm supposed to do. And I'm getting more comfortable with it. So thank you for supporting me. Thank you for watching. I hope you got some clarity in this time, and enjoy your day. Be well, my friends.